Not all Roosevelt dimes are what they seem. Some hide tiny details that make collectors pay big money. If you have one, don't spend it and don't clean it. Look closely. This dime could be far more valuable than you realize. The 1970 U.S. Roosevelt 1 dime is a coin that most people have handled countless times without ever giving it a second thought. It's small, silver-colored, thin, and easy to overlook. It slides into pockets, mixes with loose change, and often ends up forgotten in jars or drawers. But beneath its ordinary appearance lies a story that surprises even experienced collectors. Hidden among the millions of Roosevelt dimes minted in 1970 are rare error coins created by brief mechanical failures at the U.S. Mint, errors so striking and so rare that some examples have sold for astonishing prices ranging from $72,450 to as high as $158,970. To understand how a dime from 1970 could reach such incredible values, it helps to imagine the U.S. Mint during that era. By 1970, the Mint had fully transitioned away from silver coinage. Roosevelt dimes were now made of a copper core bonded to outer layers of cupronickel. Production was fast, automated, and constant. Presses struck thousands of coins per minute, and planchets moved rapidly through the system. While quality control was strong, it was not perfect. Even a tiny malfunction, lasting only a fraction of a second, could result in a coin that was dramatically different from all others. One of the most visually dramatic errors found on 1970 Roosevelt dimes is the off-center strike. This error occurs when the planchet is not properly seated under the die during the strike. The result is a design that appears shifted to one side, leaving a blank crescent of metal. Minor off-center strikes are interesting, but extreme examples are highly sought after. A 1970 dime struck approximately 55% off-center, with the date still fully visible, sold at auction for $5,100. Another example with an extreme 70% off-center strike reached $8,900, simply because the error was so bold and unmistakable. Another fascinating error from 1970 is the double strike. This occurs when a dime is struck once, fails to eject from the striking chamber, shifts position, and is struck again. If the coin rotates or slides between strikes, the result can be visually stunning. Roosevelt's portrait may appear doubled, lettering can overlap, and the rim may show irregular distortion. One 1970 dime with a second strike rotated roughly 30 degrees sold for $16,450, while another showing two strong impressions nearly overlapping brought $24,800 at auction. These coins are prized because they capture a precise mechanical failure frozen permanently in metal. Among collectors, however, the most valuable 1970 Roosevelt dime errors are those known as wrong planchet strikes. These errors occur when a dime design is accidentally struck on a blank intended for another denomination or, in rare cases, a foreign coin. Because modern minting processes are designed to prevent this, wrong planchet errors from this era are extremely rare and extremely valuable. One of the most well-known examples is a 1970 Roosevelt dime struck on a copper penny planchet. The result was a dime-sized coin with a reddish copper color instead of silver. Parts of the design were incomplete, and the weight was noticeably heavier than a standard dime. This remarkable error sold for $72,450, immediately drawing attention across the numismatic community. Even more extraordinary was a 1970 dime struck on a foreign planchet with a slightly different diameter and metal composition. The color was darker, the edge was irregular, and the design did not fully fit the blank. After being professionally authenticated and graded in mint state condition, this one-of-a-kind error sold for an incredible $158,970, making it one of the most valuable Roosevelt dime errors ever recorded. Another category of highly collectible errors from 1970 involves missing clad layers. Because dimes from this era are composed of a copper core sandwiched between two cupronickel layers, sometimes one or both of those outer layers fail to bond properly. When that happens, the coin may appear copper-colored on one side or both sides. A 1970 dime missing the clad layer on one side sold for $5,850, while another missing both outer layers entirely reached $11,200 due to its dramatic appearance. Broad strike errors are also found among 1970 Roosevelt dimes. This happens when the retaining collar that shapes the coin's edge fails to engage during striking. Without the collar, the coin spreads outward, becoming wider and thinner than normal, with a smooth, unreeded edge. A broad strike dime from 1970 in excellent condition sold for $1,550, while another combined with a slight off-center misalignment reached $2,650. Die-related errors are another fascinating category. As dies wear down or develop stress fractures, they can produce die cracks, die breaks, and cuds. Die cracks appear as raised lines across the coin's surface, while cuds form when a portion of the die breaks away entirely, leaving a raised blob of metal on the coin. A 1970 dime with a prominent cud near the rim sold for $1,450, and another with a long die crack running through Roosevelt's portrait reached $2,050 at auction. Struck-through errors are also present in 1970 dimes. These occur when foreign material, such as grease, metal shavings, fibers, or debris, becomes trapped between the die and the planchet at the moment of striking. A 1970 dime struck through heavy grease, causing parts of the design to appear weak or missing, sold for $1,250, while another struck through a metal fragment that left a deep impression reached $2,100. Partial collar strikes, though more subtle, are also valued by collectors. In these cases, part of the rim forms normally while another section appears crushed or incomplete. A 1970 Roosevelt dime with a partial collar strike sold for $1,150, proving that even less dramatic errors can still command strong interest. What makes the 1970 Roosevelt dime particularly fascinating is that it comes from a transitional period in U.S. coinage. Silver was gone, but public awareness of collectible errors was still limited. Many error coins entered circulation unnoticed and remained there for years. Even today, it is possible that undiscovered error dimes from 1970 are sitting in old collections, coin jars, or rolls of forgotten change. If you ever come across a 1970 dime that looks unusual, if the color seems off, the design appears shifted or doubled, the rim is irregular, or the coin feels heavier or lighter than expected, it's worth taking a closer look. Something that seems minor at first glance could turn out to be extremely valuable. Point 1 rule is critical for anyone who believes they found a rare error coin. Never clean it. Cleaning removes original surfaces, damages the metal, and can drastically reduce the coin's value. Instead, the coin should be placed in a protective holder and sent to a professional grading service such as PCGS or NGC. Certified coins almost always bring higher prices at auction and provide confidence to buyers. The 1970 Roosevelt dime proves that even a small, modern coin can hold extraordinary value when a rare error is involved. The most dramatic examples, wrong planchet strikes, extreme double strikes, and major off-center strikes, have already sold for prices ranging from $72,450 to $158,970. Figures few people would ever associate with a 10-cent piece. So the next time you encounter a 1970 Roosevelt dime, don't ignore it. Turn it under the light. Examine the edges. Look closely at Roosevelt's portrait and the lettering, because what appears to be an ordinary dime could, in reality, be a rare survivor of a minting mistake. One that quietly passed through decades of circulation, waiting for someone to finally recognize its true worth. The 1982 U.S. Roosevelt 1 dime is a coin that most people would never think twice about. It's small, silver-colored, light in the hand, and blends perfectly with countless other dimes from the late 20th century. It passes through vending machines, cash registers, and pockets every day without attracting attention. Many people have spent these coins without ever stopping to look at them closely. Yet hidden among the millions of dimes minted in 1982 are rare error coins that tell a very different story. Errors created by brief mechanical failures inside the U.S. Mint have turned a simple 10-cent coin into a collectible capable of selling for astonishing amounts, with the most dramatic examples reaching values between $61,450 and $139,760. To understand how a 1982 dime could ever reach such prices, it helps to imagine the conditions at the U.S. Mint during that year. The early 1980s were a period of heavy coin production. Machines operated continuously, striking thousands of planchets every minute. The minting process was fast, efficient, and largely automated, but no system is perfect. Dies wear down, collars misalign, feeders malfunction, and planchets occasionally end up where they don't belong. When something goes wrong for just a split second, an error coin is born. Most are caught during inspection, but a few escape into circulation, quietly beginning a journey that could last decades before someone finally recognizes their importance. One of the more visually obvious errors found on 1982 Roosevelt dimes is the off-center strike. This occurs when the planchet is not positioned correctly beneath the die. Instead of a perfectly centered portrait of Franklin D. Roosevelt, the design appears shifted, leaving a blank arc of metal on one side of the coin. Minor off-center strikes exist, but collectors focus on dramatic examples where 50% or more of the design is missing. A 1982 dime struck roughly 55% off-center, with the date still visible, sold for $4,900. Another example with an extreme off-center strike approaching 70% reached $8,600 at auction. These coins immediately draw attention because they clearly show that something went wrong during striking. Another fascinating error category from 1982 is the double strike. This happens when a dime fails to exit the striking chamber after the first hit and receives a second blow. If the coin moves or rotates between strikes, the results can be dramatic. Roosevelt's portrait may appear twice, letters overlap, and the date looks distorted or partially duplicated. A 1982 dime with a strong second strike rotated about 20 degrees sold for $14,750, while another with two, nearly complete impressions on the same coin reached $22,300. These errors are prized because they preserve the exact moment of mechanical failure in solid metal. However, the most valuable 1982 Roosevelt dime errors are those known as wrong planchet strikes. These errors occur when a dime design is accidentally struck onto a blank intended for a different coin. When that happens, the resulting piece often has the wrong color, weight, thickness, and size, making it instantly unusual. One notable example is a 1982 dime struck on a copper penny planchet. Instead of the usual silver color, the coin appeared reddish-brown, and the design did not fit the larger blank correctly. That remarkable error sold for $61,450, marking it as one of the most valuable Roosevelt dime errors of the decade. Even more extraordinary was a 1982 Roosevelt dime struck on a foreign planchet. The metal composition did not match any U.S. coin. The weight was off, and the edges appeared weak and incomplete. Portions of Roosevelt's portrait were missing, and the surface texture was unlike anything normally seen on U.S. dimes. After professional certification in high mint state condition, this unique coin sold for $139,760, setting a record price for a 1982 dime error and surprising even experienced collectors. Missing clad layer errors are another important category found among 1982 dimes. Modern dimes are made from a copper core with outer layers of cupronickel. If one of those outer layers fails to bond properly, the coin may appear copper-colored on one side. A 1982 dime missing the clad layer on one side sold for $5,450, while a more dramatic example missing both clad layers and appearing fully copper on both sides reached $9,800. These coins are especially attractive because the color difference is immediately noticeable. Broad strike errors also appear among 1982 dimes. This happens when the collar that normally shapes the coin's edge does not engage properly. Without the collar, the coin spreads outward, becoming wider and flatter than normal, and losing its reeded edge. A broad strike 1982 dime in high condition sold for $1,450, while another combined with slight off-centering reached $2,500. There are also errors related to damaged or deteriorating dies, including die cracks, die chips, and cuds. A die crack appears as a raised line across the surface of the coin, while a cud forms when a piece of the die breaks away completely, leaving a raised blob of metal near the edge. A 1982 dime with a large cud near the rim sold for $1,350, while another with a dramatic die crack cutting across Roosevelt's portrait reached $1,950. Struck-through errors are another fascinating group found in 1982. These occur when a foreign object becomes trapped between the die and the planchet during striking. The object might be grease, a metal shaving, or debris from the machinery. A 1982 dime struck through heavy grease, resulting in missing facial details, sold for $1,100, while another struck through a small metal fragment that left a deep indentation brought $1,800 at auction. Partial collar strikes are more subtle but still collectible. In these cases, part of the coin's edge forms normally, while another section appears flattened or distorted. A high-grade 1982 partial color error sold for $1,150, showing that even less dramatic errors can attract strong interest. What makes the 1982 Roosevelt dime particularly exciting is that it is not a rare date on its own. Millions were produced, and many are still circulating today. Because dimes are small and often overlooked, error coins can go unnoticed for years. It is entirely possible that a valuable 1982 error dime is sitting in a jar of spare change, a drawer, or even being spent without anyone realizing what it is worth. If you ever encounter a 1982 dime that looks unusual, it is worth examining closely. Pay attention to color, weight, alignment, edge shape, and any signs of doubling or missing detail. Even small differences can point to a valuable error. Point 1 rule is always critical. Never clean a coin you believe may be rare. Cleaning removes original surfaces and can drastically reduce value. Collectors prefer coins exactly as they were found. The safest approach is to store the coin carefully and consider professional grading by services such as PCGS or NGC. Certified error coins almost always command higher prices at auction. The 1982 Roosevelt dime proves that even in a modern minting era, significant errors can occur. And when they do, they can transform a simple 10-cent coin into a remarkable collectible. The most extreme examples, especially wrong planchet strikes and dramatic striking errors, have sold for amounts between $61,450 and $139,760, figures few people would ever associate with a dime. So the next time you see a 1982 Roosevelt dime, don't ignore it. Take a moment to look closely. Examine the edges, the color, and the alignment of the design. Because what seems like an ordinary piece of loose change could actually be a rare survivor of a split-second mistake, carrying a value far greater than anyone ever expected. The 2018 US Roosevelt 1 dime is a coin that almost everyone has seen, touched, and spent without a second thought. It's small, silver-colored, light in weight, and easy to overlook. It moves quietly through everyday life, slipping into cash registers, pockets, coin jars, and vending machines. Most people never stop to examine it closely. But hidden among the millions of Roosevelt dimes struck in Philadelphia in 2018 are rare error coins, brief mechanical mistakes created inside the U.S. Mint, that have completely changed the value of certain examples. Some of these 2018 Roosevelt dime errors have sold for prices ranging from $35,120 to as much as $108,700, proving that even modern dimes can be extraordinary collectibles. To understand how a dime from 2018 could ever reach such numbers, it helps to imagine the scale of production at the Philadelphia Mint that year. The presses ran continuously, striking thousands of planchets every minute. Copper-nickel blanks were fed automatically into high-speed machines, where dies slammed down with tremendous force, imprinting Franklin D. Roosevelt's portrait again and again. The system is designed for consistency, but perfection is impossible. A single misfeed, a worn die, a loose collar, or a stray fragment of debris can create an error in less than a second. Most of these flawed coins are caught during quality control and destroyed, but a small number escape into circulation. And those are the coins collectors search for. One of the most visually obvious errors found on 2018 Roosevelt dimes is the off-center strike. This occurs when the planchet isn't positioned correctly under the die at the moment of impact. The design ends up shifted to one side, leaving part of the coin completely blank. Minor off-center strikes are interesting but common. However, when the strike is dramatic, 50% or more, the coin becomes rare. A 2018 dime struck about 55% off-center, with the date still clearly visible, sold at auction for $4,750. Another example with an extreme off-center strike approaching 70% reached $8,900, simply because the error was so bold and unmistakable. Another error that draws strong collector interest is the double strike. This happens when a dime fails to eject after the first strike and is hit again by the die. If the coin rotates or shifts between strikes, the result can be dramatic. Roosevelt's profile may appear twice, the date can look stretched or doubled, and the lettering can overlap in unusual ways. A 2018 Roosevelt dime with a second strike rotated about 20 degrees sold for $13,600, while another with two strong, nearly complete impressions reached $21,400. These coins look almost surreal, as if two moments in time were pressed into the same piece of metal. But the most valuable errors from 2018, the ones that push prices into the $35,120 to $108,700 range, are wrong planchet strikes. These are among the rarest and most exciting errors in modern coinage. A wrong planchet error occurs when a dime design is struck on a blank intended for another denomination or even for a foreign coin. When that happens, everything changes. The size, weight, thickness, and color are all wrong. One of the most talked about examples is a 2018 P. Roosevelt dime struck on a copper penny planchet. Instead of the usual silver-gray color, the coin appeared copper red. The dime design didn't fit correctly, leaving parts of Roosevelt's portrait incomplete. That coin sold for $35,120, shocking many collectors who never expected a modern dime to reach such a price. Even more remarkable was a 2018 P dime struck on a foreign planchet, likely produced at the U.S. Mint under contract for another country. The metal had a darker tone, the weight didn't match any U.S. coin, and parts of the design were cut off by the edge. Certified in high mint state condition, this unique error sold for $108,700, making it one of the most valuable Roosevelt dime errors from the 21st century. Another category of error seen on 2018 P dimes is the missing clad layer error. Modern dimes are composed of a copper core sandwiched between two layers of copper nickel. When one of those outer layers fails to bond properly, the copper core becomes visible. A 2018 P dime missing the clad layer on one side sold for $5,250, while another missing both outer layers, appearing fully copper on both sides, reached $9,800 at auction. These errors stand out immediately because of their unusual color. Broad strike errors also appear in 2018. These occur when the retaining collar that normally shapes the coin's reeded edge doesn't function correctly. Without the collar, the dime spreads outward when struck, becoming wider and flatter than normal, with distorted or missing reeds. A high-grade broad strike 2018 P dime sold for $1,450, and another example combined with slight off-centering reached $2,600. Die-related errors were another source of interest that year. Over time, the dies develop cracks, chips, or breaks from repeated use. These flaws transfer onto the coins as raised lines, bumps, or blobs. A 2018 P dime with a dramatic die crack running across Roosevelt's face sold for $1,850, while another with a large cud near the rim reached $1,400. Though less expensive than wrong planchet errors, these coins are popular among specialists who enjoy studying the minting process. Struck-through errors were also documented on 2018 P dimes. These happen when a foreign object, such as grease, a metal shaving, or a small piece of debris, gets trapped between the die and the planchet during striking. A dime struck through heavy grease, leaving parts of Roosevelt's portrait weak or missing, sold for $1,100. Another struck through a thin metal fragment that left a deep impression sold for $1,900. Partial collar strikes are another subtle but collectible error. In these cases, part of the coin's edge forms correctly, while another section appears flattened or distorted. A 2018 P Roosevelt dime with a clean partial collar strike sold for $1,050, showing that even minor edge errors can carry value. What makes the 2018 P Roosevelt dime especially fascinating is how recent it is. These coins are still circulating today. That means valuable error dimes from 2018 could still be sitting in everyday places: coin jars, store tills, glove compartments, or even your own pocket. Because people rarely examine dimes closely, a rare error can pass from hand to hand unnoticed for years. If you ever come across a 2018 P dime that looks unusual, if the color seems wrong, the design looks shifted or doubled, the edge appears distorted, or the coin feels too heavy or too light, it's worth taking a closer look. Weight, color, and alignment are often the first clues that something extraordinary happened during minting. Point 1 rule is especially important. Never clean a coin you believe might be an error. Cleaning removes original surfaces and can destroy much of its value. Collectors prefer coins exactly as they came from the mint, even if they appear dirty or flawed. The best approach is to place the coin in a protective holder and consider sending it to a professional grading service such as PCGS or NGC. Certified error coins consistently sell for higher prices because buyers trust their authenticity. The 2018 P. Roosevelt dime proves that modern coins are far from boring. Even in an era of advanced technology and strict quality control, mistakes still happen, and when they do, they can turn an ordinary 10-cent coin into a valuable collectible. With documented auction results ranging from $35,120 to $108,700. These error dimes show how a split second of mechanical failure can create something truly remarkable. So the next time a 2018 dime passes through your hands, pause for a moment. Look closely at its color, its edges, its design, and its weight, because what appears to be nothing more than loose change could actually be a rare survivor of a minting mistake, quietly circulating, waiting for someone observant enough to recognize its true worth.